This lesson is on arithmetic sequences. You can go ahead and cut just the dotted lines. You can do that first, or you can do that at the end. An arithmetic sequence, or arithmetic, you also know that word is arithmetic. We call it arithmetic sequences. They all have a common difference. Okay, so if we're describing these patterns and then finding those next two terms, we know that if we're going from 3 to 11, or 11 to 9, or 9 to 7, we're going down 2 each time. So that common difference is -2. And then we can also determine those next two terms in the sequence are going to be a 5 and a 3. So then we have another sequence right here, and we have the first 4 terms. And we're looking to see what happens here. Every time we go from one term to the next, this is multiplying by 2. To find, so that common difference is being a multiplying by 2. Now the next two terms, 36 times 2 is 72, and 72 times 2 is 144. All right, the next thing that we're going to look at is more of common difference. Okay, the common difference, to find it, we're subtracting that first term from the second. That difference between any two consecutive terms is of the common difference. And then what we have is, again, just identifying what's happening throughout this sequence. I'm adding 4, I'm going up 4, so D is 4. And again here, sometimes you're going to have decimals. You're just going to subtract to determine. This is going up 1.3 each time. So that common difference is a positive 1.3. All right, so now this is the thing that we're going to be looking at a lot today, is between the explicit formula and our recursive formula. They look the same, but they are very different. In an explicit formula, we always are going to have this a sub n. It's like an exponent, but it's on the bottom. And then we're going to have it being equal to a1, which is the first term, which is right here. It says a1, a sub 1 is that first term, plus whatever term you're trying to find minus 1, and we're multiplying that number times this common difference, which we know still it to be that d variable. So if I was going to set it up, if I'm writing an explicit formula for each of these sequences, there's two ways you're really going to see the answer. Okay, so I have a sub n is equal to, and then look back here, I'm looking for the first term. It's right here, so it's -99 plus whatever term I'm trying to find minus 1, and I'm multiplying it by the common difference. This is called an explicit means to multiply, and what's happening here is I'm going up 11, so that common difference is 11. Now sometimes you'll see it written just like this, but there are some cases where you're going to need to simplify. This is essentially like a distributive on the back. So a sub n, and this is how your classwork will be today, -99 plus 11 times n is 11n. 11 times -1 is -11. And I have like terms. So the explicit formula that you guys are going to need to be looking at and writing today, here's a negative 99 minus 11 more is a negative 110, and I also have that positive 11n. That's the formula, the condensed formula for how to write that explicit. So you can go ahead and pause the video and try this one, doing the same thing, plugging in exactly what values you need to, distribute, and simplify. Go ahead and pause and try. Okay, you saw that hopefully you filled this out correctly, and then you could have distributed. And then hopefully you combined your like terms. So you might see your final answers in either of these two ways. Now the next thing we're looking at is a recursive formula. Okay, so recursive, we did explicit, had that multiplying thing going on at the end by the common difference. Recursive, we're going to add or subtract. So we're going to write this recursive formula. It's similar but a little bit different. This a right here is not the first term anymore. You're not plugging in for that. The only number that we're plugging in for is this d, that common difference, unless it tells us the number in the sequence that we're looking to find. But if we're just writing the formula, we're just substituting for that value d. Okay? So I have the beginning part is the same. It's a sub n equals a times n minus 1. And I need to add or subtract my common difference. It just so happens that this sequence is going down by 3, so I'm going to subtract 3 on the end. And that's it. If I'm writing this recursive formula, I'm doing the same thing. I'm just adding that different, whatever that common difference is. That's a parentheses, sorry. N minus 1. And this sequence is going down by a half, or by 0.5. If it was going up by 0.5, it would have been plus 0.5. Okay? Now we're going to go back and forth between the two. We're going to go from explicit to recursive, and then recursive from explicit. So I have recursive, and now it's telling me, here's my recursive, sorry, and then it's telling me what the first term is. So I'm writing explicit, go to explicit, a sub n equals, what is the first term? It's 7.3 plus n minus 1. And remember, if it's explicit, that means I'm multiplying by the common difference. That the recursive added it, but I am multiplying for the explicit, 3.4. And pause the video and try this one. It's the same thing, going from this recursive to explicit. The first term was 9 plus n minus 1. I'm multiplying it. That's a negative 5, so you multiply by negative 5. Remember this here in parentheses, a1, a sub 1. It's the same exact thing. It's the first term. And now we're going backwards. Recursive is what we're writing. So look at the recursive formula and from this explicit. Okay? So remember, if we're writing a recursive, we don't need that first term. So we don't need that first number. All we care about is the common difference, which we're no longer multiplying. It's going to be added or subtracted. So a sub n equals a times n minus 1. Remember, I'm looking at my recursive. And this is a plus, but this is a negative, so just minus 2. I know it's a little bit confusing, but refer back to exactly what you're plugging in, what you're doing, based on what's given. Pause the video and try the next one. So when you unpause, you should have seen that this number was crossed out. You need to know that because I don't care about the first term if I'm writing recursive. And now I'm going to leave that a times n minus 1. And this is a positive 8. So plus 8 because recursive tells me to add. That explicit is what multiplied.